Carolina Risotto.
What's up, guys? Carolina Risotto here. Welcome to another episode of No Ducks Given podcast, the podcast where we talk openly and honestly about the highs and lows in life because vulnerability is a superpower, not a weakness. Today's episode is about improving your self-esteem and body image with Brazilian model and health coach Nathalia Novaes. At a young age, when she started her modeling career, she struggled with an eating disorder. And since then, she's become passionate about helping people who are struggling with a similar issue and also to redefine their relationship with themselves and their body. Thank you so much for joining us, Nathalia.
I love this intro. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for joining, for reaching out to be on No Ducks Given podcast. I love it when that happens. It's so fun.
Well, the reason was because I realized it's a podcast about sharing your truth and your vulnerability. And I think I'm at a point in my life where I think we're wasting too much time trying to be someone we're not. So I'm always like trying to find people that are living their authentic selves. So
thank you. That's what we try to do around here. We're very vulnerable and honest about everything that we can because my goal with the podcast really is just to help people accept that we are all humans and we're all going through the same problems. And the best way for us to improve and become stronger is to actually talk about it, you know?
Exactly.
Success stories about how you overcame something and not about the big fancy job you got. So that's why I like to break things down.
I love that concept. And also, I think there's never an end to that journey. Like we are never in a point in our lives, and I don't care how successful anyone is, we're always growing and learning and making mistakes, frankly. So that's the beauty of life.
I totally agree with you. So I wanted to start off this conversation by talking about the life of a model, because I know now you also work as a health coach, but could you explain to our listeners what it's like to work as a model? Like, so we get a little bit of an idea of the day-to-day.
There is not really a routine. Every single day is different. But basically the way it works is you start by doing a bunch of castings. So castings are the equivalent of a job interview. You stand in a line with, it could be hundreds of girls. They could be 4 hours waiting. And then you show up and the client, usually they will look at your book. So your book is, the pictures that you have modeling. And they will sometimes just like look at the pictures, not even look at you, and just like, thank you, goodbye. And you waited 3 hours for that moment when deep down they didn't even look at you. So you do that, I want to say 50 times, and then you get one really good job. And then that one job is what people see. So from the outside, it looks like you're winning, which is true because it's a really tough industry. But to get that one job or, those, say, like a couple of really big jobs, you get so much rejection. And that's the nature of the job. The daily life of a model is the daily life of rejection. It is tough, but at the same time, it taught me so much because it makes you develop a thick skin. It gets to a point where you're like, first of all, like, the rejection is not about me, it's about the industry. And also you have no other choice. Either you quit or you learn to live with the fact that you cannot please everybody. You're always a freelancer as a model. So some people, they ask me like, oh, who do you model for? Like, where do you work? And I'm always like, you don't really have like one client, you have a bunch of clients. So there's no routine, everything changes. You don't know what you're gonna do next week. I've had, especially the first like 10 years of my career, I would be, at home and then out of the sudden I get an email like, oh, do you wanna do this job in Italy tomorrow? And, I'm in New York and I have to, fly the next day to Europe. And it's really exciting, but then with time, you're like, you start to get a little tired.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, it seems like you don't really have control of your time and also of the kind of jobs you're going to get neither because you don't know what people are looking for. And it's very much appearance-based, right?
At the end of the day, it is. As much as, of course, it's not only that, it's your personality, yes, it's how good you move in front of the camera, yes, but at the end of the day, it's really about your looks. But that's also like a really cool thing about modeling because people assume that models are so superficial, But there is like another side of it, which is you realize like that's your work. Like this is like, what pays the bills. Like it's not who I am. It's not, you start to detach yourself a little bit. I think if you are smart, some people don't do that. But I think with time, when you grow a little bit inside, you realize, oh my God, this is just like the package. And it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, when I look at models, I think their job is to look exceptional. So yeah, they're going to spend more time than the normal person taking care of their looks. I don't think that makes them shallow. It makes them professional. People just don't understand that side.
Right. It's work. It's work.
It's work.
And then you look at that not as like, oh, I am so important because of that. No, it's like, I want to pay my bills.
Yeah. Is there like a competition? Who has the best body? Like, do these conversations happen amongst models or?
It's funny. Yeah. I do think like, human beings can suck in any industry. But I think in general, it's way less like negative than people assume. I've met a bunch of really negative models that are like clearly just like trying to somehow like they don't want you to succeed because they think that means them not succeeding. But those were like just a few. Most of the models are just like, in that struggle with the rejection. So they love to connect with other models because at the end of the day, we're like the only ones that understand how much rejection we go through. So I've met so many girls and, some of my best friends, we bonded because of that like sense of sharing our vulnerability in a way like, oh my God, this sucks. Like, how do you deal with that? And I don't think there's a lot of like, oh, I look better than you. I don't look better than you. It's more like, how the fuck do you survive this crazy industry?
That's interesting because I think people still have a lot of resistance talking about mental health and body image. Even the topic of eating disorder is still new. Like 10 years ago, it was barely talked about. Right. And the fact that the people who are talking about it honestly the most are actually the ones that look the best is kind of an interesting contradiction.
Yeah, that reminds me of that book, The Beauty Myth. And I think that either the first or the last sentence is something along the lines of like the elite of the, beauty myth are the ones that have to talk about it the most because they are the ones that can prove that it is a myth. Because what is the myth? The myth is that once you look a certain way and, that certain way is different for everybody. Like the ideal body, it's different for everybody. But the myth is you achieve that body and then you're happy. Or you achieve that body and then like you find love or you find happiness and fulfillment. And that is so not true. Most of the most insecure people I know are extremely good looking models. There is no correlation between how you look and how you feel. Wow. That's what I've learned. No correlation. So it can be like, I know a lot of very good looking, attractive women that are very happy. That can happen, but it's not because they're attractive. So it's because they learn to be happy with who they are.
Would you say the majority of models is insecure or just really?
I would.
Really?
I would. Yeah. It's hard to tell because I also think, like you said, a lot of people just don't share, right? So sometimes they look confident and, frankly, it's none of my business. So I'm like, okay, I don't fully buy it. But from my own friends, and I think I tend to naturally gravitate towards people that share their truth. So they have their insecurities. They learn how to live with them. But that's the beauty of life too. It's not like you reach a point where you're like, oh, I think I'm perfect. It's more like I accept my imperfections and I live with them and I enjoy like all aspects of what it means to be me.
The strength that you can get from being a model is being really confident in yourself and giving yourself that self-love because you have to learn to separate your body and your self-image from the public eye and the public opinion. Right. So I feel like perhaps that's a superpower that you can get from pursuing a career as a model. I mean, would you say?
For me, it was. For me, it was the best gift I got from this career.
Wow.
Was this long, like, mind you, 13 years. Like, it's been a slow, steady process, but very painful at times. But it really taught me that the only person's opinion that matters is mine. the only like thing that actually matters is like at the end of the day, do I go, before I sleep, am I satisfied with the person that I am? Not the person that I look for other people, like not the success that other people are perceiving or not perceiving. That freedom of living in that place of like, yeah, I want feedback from other people, yes, but I would take what makes sense and I would not take what doesn't make sense. And I think that is real empowerment, not like, oh, let me mold myself in a way that like makes sense for other people and just like try to fit in.
How would you compare your relationship with yourself and with your self-esteem from the beginning of your career and then today? Like, how did it start? How did these like rejections affect you at first? And then how did that evolve?
I think at first, and what I really admire about myself, I was just like, nothing is going to stop me. Like, that was my mindset. It was, something strong, but at the same time, I didn't love myself. I was just trying to make it no matter what. And it didn't matter to me if I was going to get hurt. It didn't matter if I develop an eating disorder, whatever it takes, I would do it. And I think that's better than not doing anything. I was living my life. It was very intense. But now I feel like I'm in a place where my well-being today, right now, at this moment, is what matters the most. And that is actual self-love. Not like, oh, I want success no matter what. That's not real self-love. So I think that's what changed the most, just putting my well-being first.
But do you think you can succeed at the beginning of your career by prioritizing your mental health and your well-being?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I thought a lot about that. I think it is. I don't have any regrets, but I do believe if I had the mindset I have today, I would have been more successful. But, it's hard to tell because I agree. It's sometimes you need that, thirst energy that is so uncomfortable, right? Like, because you want that so badly. But yeah, I like to believe that when you're in your authenticity and you're actually like living in a way that makes you happy today, you attract things that will make you happy. So I think it's hard to tell how that will look. So maybe it's not success, but what is success, right? Like that is the question. Like what is actually success? I think to me today, it's being happy, like actually happy.
How do you think you built your self-esteem through your career as a model? Was it every rejection made you stronger? Or was it like a wave of emotions where sometimes it made you stronger, sometimes it made you weaker? And then how do you define success in a career that's so full of rejection?
I think it's a process. I think like my process was the modeling career, but I think ultimately is putting yourself out there. So I think that's what I did really right. I got really hurt and sometimes I got really happy. Like I had extremely happy moments throughout this journey. And I think each one of those moments, changed me in a little way. And then all of that compounded to like create a good solid self-esteem. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like sometimes I felt terrible. Sometimes things felt really good. And then I kept going. So I think it's just having the courage to live and not exist. Because I think so many people are just existing. And it's hard to imagine how you can build a solid foundation within yourself without being fully alive and looking at life. Like I want to experience things.
Yeah, if you're not taking risks, you don't get to really feel or experience anything.
Exactly.
And I think no matter what you do, you're going to get hurt.
Exactly. At this point, like I went through so much that like, I know I can overcome. And I think that's the beauty of it. When you get to that point where you're like, oh, no shit, I'm going to get hurt. Of course I'm going to get hurt. I always do. And it's fine. Like you get over it and then something amazing happens. And that's the nature of life.
What I always tell people when they're going through a really tough moment, or even when I tell myself, and I've been doing this for about like 4 years, I'm proud of myself because it's something I invented. It was my own like mechanism. It's like when you get really tragic news and you kind of just feel the world warping around you and you're like, oh my God, everything's falling apart. I take a breather and I'm like, okay, this is happening to me right now. This was going to happen at some point. This is the moment that I have to face it, and I will become better from it. But I accept the fact that this moment was inevitable. It was going to happen to me. So it's like, what am I going to do about it? I need to accept it. That's number one. And then proactive. What is the solution? What can I do? Is it one day feeling miserable? That's fine.
Exactly.
But then what am I doing tomorrow? You know, but I just accept the fact that there was no running away from that moment. And I think when you stop yourself from living, you're not going to stop yourself from having these lows. They're going to come to you either way. So might as well be bold, you know, pursue a dream and get rejected a gazillion times, because then at least you're doing something for yourself instead of for the fear that's deep within you. You don't want to let fear control your actions.
Yeah, I think the choice we have to make is, do we want to add happiness to our lives? Like the suffering part, I don't think that's optional, because we are here on this planet to learn, and learning is uncomfortable. It really is. Like it can be more uncomfortable or less uncomfortable. The resistance that we have towards like feeling negative emotions, or the resistance of failure, that is bad. But the choice we have to make is, am I brave enough to experience happiness? Because at the end of the day, you can like shut yourself down to your life, but the sadness will only increase actually. So
that's true. Yeah. I always advise people to think about their childhood self, because when we're kids, I think that's when we are the most honest and we dream the biggest, because we're kind of like so ingenu.
Yeah,
what's the word in English?
Like naive.
Naive. We're so naive that we don't know how hard things are, and so we're like, I'm gonna become president.
Exactly,
you know, and it's like, why not? You know. So I think when we get older, we start overthinking things and then limiting our dreams. Let it be because of other people or because of ourselves or insecurities. It doesn't matter. Like, be a kid. What would you do if you were like 5 years old? What was your dream when you were a child? That's usually the most like authentic one.
Oh, it's so true. I always try to channel my 6-year-old, because I remember vividly, like there's this one scene I never forget. I was on the beach and I was getting little shells in the, like collecting shells on the beach. I don't know. I think I will never experience that happiness, like that level of happiness and connection with nature ever again. But I always channel that. I'm like, I want to get as close as I can to that mindset of like living life like a dream. Like you are, you know, you have to be responsible, of course. You have to think strategically. You have to think about the future, obviously. But you cannot let fear get in front of you. I think that's a big mistake.
Now, you obviously have a really mature point of view.
Thank you.
Have you always been this way? Like, tell me a little bit about your early journey as a model and as a person. How was your mental health then? And then take me through that journey through time of how you grew.
In my early years as a model, I think also that's the reason I developed an eating disorder. I was just trying to please people. I was really looking at myself from the outside. So I thought I would be happy if people perceived me as whatever it is at that moment I wanted to be perceived as. So I looked at the world from the outside, not from the inside. It took years and lots of tears to realize, oh, the inside that matters. Like this person here matters. The worse that I treated my body, the more I was looking at myself as an object, as either somebody that was valuable because I had success or not, if I had money or not, if I, lived in whatever place I wanted to live. So.
And when you were going through the eating disorder, did you feel like that body that you had at the time, which I'm guessing was way thinner than average, did you honestly feel like that was the best body that you had for your career?
I had many phases. So I got to a point where I was so skinny that the fashion industry was like, we don't want, like, you look sick.
Wow.
So I got to that point. But right before that, and I was already like inside myself, I wasn't doing well. I was working a lot, but I felt really bad. Like I never felt like it was enough, because that's the problem. You always want more. If you're in the mindset of trying to find happiness and success from the outside world, you will never be satisfied. So the same happened with my body. I wanted to be skinny for other people, for the industry. So it was never enough.
Where did that need to be skinnier come from? Because you've always been a stunning, beautiful model. I've seen the pictures, right? I didn't know you then, but I've seen the pictures. And to me, you looked healthy, just the right amount. So what made you think, what was that thing that maybe made you switch and think that you needed to lose more weight that led you into the eating disorder?
When I was scouted, that was the first thing I've heard, like, oh my God, you can be so successful, but you have to lose 6 to 10 kilos. I don't remember how much I weighed, but I was like what I am now. Because basically my journey has been, I started the way I am, but that was too big for the industry because I have like big hips.
This was back in like 2000.
Yeah, that was 13 years ago. So like 2009.
Okay, so the worldview of what a model looks like was very different, right? It was all about being slim. Because today people are praising plus size and normal bodies, but back then that wasn't the case.
Ooh, it was a different monster. It was the skinniest, the better. That was never like
this
too
was
much.
Not good enough in 2010.
Oh no,
that's
absolutely
crazy.
Not. Absolutely not. And then and they were right in a way, because I lost the weight. I was 18, so you lose weight pretty easily. I lost it and I got pretty good job. So I was like, they are right. Like, all I have to do is be skinny and I'll be successful and travel the world and, do all of these things.
With that initial weight loss, did you feel healthy still?
No, it definitely wasn't healthy, but it wasn't, it wasn't a disease or anything like that. It was just me dieting and it really sucked and I was hungry, but it wasn't like
it didn't
I
look
was
sick.
sleeping. I was, I was a normal, quote unquote, person.
Normal model.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is still like way skinnier than average, but doesn't look sick.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So that's the first level of weight loss that you reached.
At some point they were like, oh, enough. Like, this is good. But then it was so forced that I realized, like, for me to maintain that body, I would have to drive myself crazy because it wasn't my natural body. It was okay for like a couple of years. But eventually, like, how am I going to live hungry my whole life?
What was your eating habit? Like, how much did you eat to maintain that weight?
Hard to remember. I
Did you eat 3 times a day, or how does it work?
Yeah, it was. So we talked about this. So it got to a point where, for example, I'm a very social person. So I would go out with my friends and they want to go to a restaurant or something. And I would always I had to measure myself all the time in the bathroom to make sure I didn't gain weight. And I knew it was crazy.
During a meal?
That was the level of fear that I had to develop to deal with the hunger. I was just so damn hungry and I couldn't sleep. And I knew my stomach was hurting.
At that point, you were already having the eating disorder.
Yeah,
so
that's
you were
when
way
I got
below the weight. Okay.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a slow process. So I think what got to that point was like the chronic hunger. I think that messes up with your brain, that messes up with, your immune system and your mental health. Obviously, you're starving yourself. So.
What is chronic hunger? I've never heard that before.
Well, I just made that up, but
Let's
no,
go.
I just mean I felt hungry all the time.
Okay.
I think if you put any human being or any animal actually through hunger, through extended periods of time, at some point there's going to be some consequence. I think it doesn't matter if it was self-inflicted, like I was making myself hungry, but still like my soul didn't know that. So my body was starving. So then it got to a point where I developed compulsive eating. Then things got really bad.
So explain to me, how does that feel when you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're clearly like unhealthy, way too skinny, starving yourself, and you can feel that you're starving, but your mind is still telling you to lose more weight.
Yeah.
How does that disconnect happen and how does that feel?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think that's the thing. You don't see it. The mind is so strong. We want to believe what we want to believe. In a way, it was just like a mindset of I will never be skinny enough. This is what these people have been telling me. So I have to do my absolute best to be as skinny as possible. I didn't see a skinny person as much as I knew because people were telling me. It got to a point that the industry was like, you're too skinny. But I couldn't see it because I didn't want to see it. So ultimately, it's what you want. And also, it got to a point where I got a little addicted to hunger, which that was the weirdest thing because everything that we do that becomes normal, becomes our routine, our habits, they eventually become our comfort zone. So hunger became my comfort zone. I felt in control when I was hungry. I felt like I'm doing the right thing. I made myself believe that being unhealthy was healthy. So obviously it's a mental disorder, right? So I was seeing reality in a very distorted way, but at the same time, I think overcoming an eating disorder made me realize that I can believe what I want to believe. Like I have that power inside of me. Like I literally changed my reflection in the mirror. If you can do that, you can change your life for something positive. So, but it is a crazy journey to look back and remember, like, I don't know, I just didn't want to see it. And I kind of got used to the pain, and pain was my comfort zone.
And your addiction.
Yeah, it's an addiction.
What did it take for you to get out of that new comfort zone that you put yourself in that was so toxic? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because when we think comfort zone, we think comfortable. Mm-hmm. But it's not always. Sometimes your comfort zone can be the most toxic thing for you. So how'd you get yourself out of that?
I think it was the wish to be happy. I'm very grateful that I had, normal, happy childhood, and I wanted that back. In the process of getting better, I gained a bunch of weight. And then to the point where, like, best moment of my life, but I became a plus size model and,
Which is basically a normal person.
Exact. When I say plus size, some people
crazy.
get even, like, I was a size 12. Like, for my natural weight, it was overweight, quote unquote. Like I had to go through that journey, but at the same time, it's wild that they would, put me in that category as plus size.
So it was you. It was not other people telling you you're unhealthy. Ultimately, it came down to you changing the narrative for yourself to make that change.
It was, but I think it was God. I don't think it was just me. Like, yeah, that's the thing. I think we're never alone. I don't know. I'm not saying I have the answers. I have no idea how this universe works, but I think it wasn't, like, I don't take full credit. I got to a point where I was so skinny that I went to a hospital, but that was years prior. Like that was, the journey was really like ups and downs. I remember like this one day I had a compulsive like eating night and I had this amazing job the next day. And I was just like, first of all, I cannot even sleep because I was so stuffed and I was so uncomfortable physically. I was like, why am I doing this to myself? I had this amazing job tomorrow. And a part of me is like, I don't want to be happy. What the hell is wrong with me? Like I achieved everything I wanted and I'm so unhappy. Something has to change.
Did anything in that process feel like self-sabotage?
Yeah. And that's the tough part of it because like I know that was the journey I had to go through, but I think a part of me was just fed up with trying to please everybody. So I kind of like wanted to get out. So my higher self like really wanted out, but my mind, my brain wanted that career to work.
What would you say to someone who's struggling with their body image right now? What are things that they should be asking themselves or conversations they should be starting with loved ones?
Talk to people, I would say. That is the gateway to yourself. Whoever you're comfortable with. And if you don't have anyone you're comfortable with, get a therapist. Have both, even better. Go inwards, because we're always focused on our outside appearance, but at the end of the day, it's really about what's on your mind. So I love mirror work. So mirror work is basically just like talking to yourself in a mirror and looking at yourself. So one thing I do, and I do to this day, because of my history, I know I have to be extra careful with my body image. So every morning, and I go for a walk, and I just think about one part of my body that I'm very grateful for. So it can be my little toe, whatever, like my feet. I'm able to walk. I have a leg. And even, whatever it is that day, but remind yourself of how grateful you are about your body. And at first, you're not going to believe it. At first, it's going to feel like, oh, who am I kidding? Like, I don't like this body. But then you keep doing it. And then one day it clicks and you're like, oh my God.
It becomes
body.
a habit.
There is nothing I can say here that will make anybody change their body image tomorrow. But what I would say is if you do a little bit every day, and if you're consistent and committed to your own happiness and self-love, you will get there. Like maybe it's going to be 3 months, maybe it's going to be a year, maybe it's going to be 10 years, but it will come.
Would you say having an eating disorder is sort of like hating yourself?
I wouldn't say hating, I would say forgetting. That is such a painful existence because you are ultimately like not connecting to yourself. So you're just like, oh, stay in that little box inside your mind. I don't care about how you feel. Like all I care is like how everybody else is perceiving you. And that is death in a way because you're not living. You're just like
adapting to your environment and to other people.
Yeah. You're annihilating yourself for the sake of other people's opinion. I think ultimately an eating disorder, it's a complex thing, right? And everybody's experience is different. But mine, I think it was almost like an addiction to how I was perceived. And it's not about vanity. It's not about, oh, I want people to think I'm beautiful. It's not that. It's just like not looking at myself from the inside and always wanting to be certain, be something else that I wasn't.
It's almost like you pushed yourself to such a limit that there was no option but to listen to yourself. You're kind of yelling from the inside. You're like, look, like, please do something, change something.
Yeah, I think so. Especially like compulsion was definitely that. It was like me saying, what the hell are you doing? I don't want to be hungry every day. Do you want to live your life that way? So, okay, you're going to be hungry all day long. Now I'm going to eat everything. And so,
it's interesting. I think I understand why you were so committed to losing weight and to adapting to your industry, because you were so committed to being successful. You're like, I will do anything to succeed. Yeah. So sometimes that mindset of I will do anything and that ambition, it can reach a toxic level. So maybe check with yourself to make sure you're not losing yourself in the process.
I always say like I was the equivalent of, like people that work in finance or in banks and they don't sleep and they drink coffee all night long. And they're like, it's the same thing. It was the same process. But as a model, like what could I do? I could work out and get skinnier.
And that's what's crazy. You're like eating little and you're working out.
Oh my God, I work out for like 3 hours and
every day?
Not every day, but like I would like run and just start running and not stop. And I remember running like a half marathon without realizing. It was just, let's keep running. And out of the sudden, like I had my app where I could see how far I went and that was half a marathon. I was just really disconnected from my body. I didn't even feel tired. It was so crazy.
That's crazy. Our mind can really like play games with us. We have to be really careful because the brain is still an organ and it can get sick. That's what people forget.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the journey, the switch, right? From eating too little to now overeating, which it seems like it was just eating a normal amount because you became a plus size model, which to today's standards is a normal body. If I'm not mistaken, you tell me.
Yeah, it was a little bigger than my natural self, but not because I was eating too much, but mostly because I starved myself for so long that my body, whatever I ate, it would keep it. Because it was like,
overcompensating.
I don't know when you're going to eat next. So like, let's keep everything. So it was wild. I gained so much weight so fast and I wasn't eating like more than I eat today, for example.
How old were you at that point?
26.
Okay, 26.
What I was struggling the most at the time was compulsion. And that's why I'm so passionate, because getting out of compulsion is super hard. Like, that was a tough process. Because what happens is you eat a lot. And then you're, oh, okay, now I'm not going to eat for a long period so I can compensate for that. So what I did was I would overeat and still eat normal. So instead of overeating and starving myself. So in that process, I gained weight. I made the effort to continue to nourish myself, even when it felt like I didn't deserve it. The more I ate, even when I felt like I wasn't allowed to, the less I overeat. It's just like balancing the whole system. But it took 2 years of...
2 years, wow.
Yeah, a lot of like... I did like meditation eating. You know, I would have a meal and I would have to think about it. Like, okay, I deserve it. Like, I'm not a bad person because I'm eating. I'm not killing anybody, because that's how you feel. You feel so guilty. That's when I realized there wasn't much I could do to fight the overeating. I was overeating because I was unhappy. Because why would you do that to yourself? Why would you eat until you're uncomfortable? Because you're in pain. What matters is, like, how do you get out of it? Like, how much grace do you give yourself? Yeah, I made a mistake. Okay, I don't want to do that again. Not because I'm wrong, but because I want to be happy. Like, I don't want to feel that way again. So I want to learn from this experience.
How much do you think you could blame the modeling industry for causing this eating disorder?
It was the catalyst. I don't think everybody would have gone through what I went through had they been in my place. So I don't blame the modeling industry for everything, but I do believe also looking at other models, it breeds eating disorders. It's so sad, like the amount of models that literally died from this disease. Like, anorexia is the disease, mental health disorder that kills the most. So I would blame it a little bit. I don't like to say it, but yeah, it is better though. I'm very glad girls are not going through what I went through, because people would bully me. I would go to my agency, like way years back, not the agencies I work with now. And they would be, oh, look, Nathalia, the balloon is arriving.
Oh my God, the balloon.
And I had this agent that would look at me like, you got even bigger?
And she looked like this, by the way. This is what she looked like, and they were calling her a balloon. That's insane.
It's very judgmental. I think also there are people that love that feeling of having control over a young girl that's impressionable and that wants to make it work. So they feel a sense of power, of inflicting suffering.
Yeah, people who are causing other people's misery and enjoying it, those are the most miserable.
Exactly. That's what I've learned. And they're all like fat men.
Oh, wow.
But it's true. I realized the correlation, like all the bullies were fat. And I was like, that's interesting.
If for anybody considering being a model, what are things you think they should ask themselves first? Because do you think if you really want to become a model, you should just go for it? Or do you think if you have certain mental boundaries with yourself, maybe you should avoid that career?
Right. I think the biggest question you have to ask yourself is, do you like it? Because at the end of the day, I love this profession. And to this day, after this whole journey, like, for me, it's art. Being in front of a camera and creating images, it's something I genuinely love to do. Because otherwise, it's just not worth it. Why do you want a modeling career? Is it to prove you are attractive? Is it to, be a certain type of person? Or is it because you love the craft? And a lot of people cannot see that is a craft, but it is. But take it with a grain of salt. Like, see if you like it, see if it's worth it. And always remind yourself you are not your body. You are not your body. And you're also not your profession. Because we do that with all professions. We start to get passionate about what we do, and we think that we are that thing. And we are so much more. So don't take yourself too seriously if you want to be a model. You're going to get rejection. It's a nature of this profession. And try to learn and grow and have a nice conversation with your friends about it and open up the whole process. Try to talk to your parents, to your family, and to those that want the best for you. and keep them posted on how you're doing. Because I think that was one of my mistakes. I really kept it all in, and I didn't want to show I was hurting because I felt like that would be weakness. That would be like weak of me to tell my loved ones, hey, I don't think I can do this.
Why did you see it as a problem, being weak or feeling weak?
I thought it was weakness because I wanted to be perfect.
Did you have any role models that you felt were perfect?
Great question. I think so. I think we idealize our parents a little bit, whether we like it or not. I also thought that everybody was better than me. I think that was the feeling I always had, like, oh, everybody's better than me, so I have to like fake this thing and like be someone else to fit in.
I'm just so glad that you went for it, honestly. I'm glad that you became a model, and that not glad, but I'm grateful that you did, and that you found your strength through it, and that you're here sharing this with us today, because this is so valuable. And I think seeing such a positive perspective out of an experience that's such a low in your life, that is like so powerful. And most people don't have that. So it's cool to see also that now you're diving into this work even as a health coach, right? A mental health coach. So tell me a little bit about that and what motivated you to get started.
In the process of getting better, I started to study again. So I did my undergrad here in New York, and then I did a master's degree in journalism at Columbia here. It took me so long. It took me like 8 months to figure out, oh, it's health and wellness. All I want to do is ignite people to realize that they have all the answers. Because we think that there's somebody that will give you a recipe for, a diet or a lifestyle that will make you happy. We know what we have to do. We all know it. The problem is executing it. So basically, that is health coaching. And that's when I realized I wanted to do this. Learning how to find the light within you that will acknowledge and accept that you deserve to be happy. That is health. But doing it is so hard. We struggle to take care of ourselves. We don't have to go to rock bottom to benefit from better habits, because those little habits we do every day, they are everything. They are how much you enjoy life.
It's funny because I've always struggled with taking care of myself.
Oh, we all do, right? It's so hard. It's so hard.
Some reason it's so easy to show up for everyone else, and then when it comes to checking in on ourselves, making sure that we ate healthy today, or that we're taking time to cook ourselves a nice meal, that's always last priority. Why do you think that happens? Why do you think it's so hard for us to just focus on ourselves sometimes?
Because we don't look at ourselves. That's why I think mirror work is so important, because we don't take the time to nourish and cultivate the most important relationship that we'll always have. It's not your husband, your boyfriend, your mother, your father, your child. It's you. So I think it's just taking the time. And that's the hardest part. So yeah, meditation, mirror work, and just quiet times, going for walks and allowing everything to sink in. I think automatically we start to want to take care of ourselves.
Something I actually don't like about the New York City lifestyle, even though it's a place I love so much, is that people create this idea that you can never stop because, oh, your competition doesn't stop. They're working every weekend. Why are you not working every weekend? What do you think happens to these people who just work constantly or are constantly just focused on the external and never stop to look within? With time, what happens to you?
I think tragedy is the consequence, always. Sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it will be in the form of anxiety attacks. Sometimes it will be in the form of a depression. Sometimes it would be just being totally apathetic to life. Some people navigate really well for a long time doing that, but I think ultimately the biggest tragedy is that they are not happy and they don't even realize. So, and also, even if you look from a purely productivity perspective, if you don't take breaks, you're not going to be as productive. And this is physical. The human brain has limitations. We think we don't, but we do. We need breaks. There are plenty of studies that show that after 2 hours of intense work, either we take a break and we go back as strong as before, or we're just going to do less and less and less. And it's going to get to a point where, you're going to go back to Instagram and roll on your feet and try to distract yourself and try to believe that it was just your willpower. It's not your willpower. You need a break. It's physical. So being mindful of that.
An idea that you ignited in me just now as you were speaking is that what you were talking about earlier of we only know what we experience and we see the world through that lens. And if you've only experienced a certain amount of happiness and that's actually unhappiness, you will never know that you were never truly happy. And so you will never have a higher standard for yourself because you don't know what that feels like.
Oh, exactly.
That's so miserable.
It requires courage.
That's why I like getting out of my comfort zone and trying new things, because it's always reminding me of new parts of myself or new emotions that I can feel, and igniting these new ideas. I think that just reminds me of there's more to explore. Mm-hmm. Bottom line, go out and live today, right?
Yeah.
Woo-hoo. Oh my God, this was so lovely.
It was fun. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Damn, I feel so motivated. I hope you guys do too. Please let us know where people can find you and your amazing work.
Please follow me on Instagram, Novaesnati, Novaesnati. And then if you speak Portuguese, follow us on Nutricionalmente podcast. So that's my podcast with my partner who's a nutritionist. And we talk about all these things that we talked about here. And a little bit more on the scientific side of it, of how you can live a healthier life. And if you only speak English, go to Podher, at Podher on Instagram. And I have another podcast there with interviews just like you do here. But we focus on health and wellness and how you can have better habits every day and have a little bit more of self-love.
Amazing. I'm Carolina Risotto. This was No Ducks Given podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Quack.
Quack.